So let's go. We got another Philip DeFranco video. Y'all are probably sick of talking about Philip DeFranco, Philip the State Department at this point, but dude, he's just so bad. He's so bad every day. It's a worse video about Africa. And I told you he's focusing on Africa right now because I don't know if his scripts are written for him by the CIA and the State Department and NATO, but they might as well be, right? And that is what NATO and the US are concerned about right now. They're concerned about all their puppet dictatorships being overthrown in Africa, and then those countries moving to side with China and Russia and the rising multipolar alliance in the East. So most of the propagandists, most of the scumbags and liars who serve the Western imperialists and finance capitalists like Philip DeFranco are focusing their propaganda on Africa right now. So that's why I think it's really important to debunk a lot of it and go through it. And obviously, Philip DeFranco is getting millions and millions of views on this video. And despite the fact that TikTok has a policy against misinformation,
Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Benin.
Many of our videos in 7
Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Benin say they'll participate in ECOWAS
misinformation. They've never, ever even given Phil as much of a slap on the wrist. Even when I have proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that what Philip DeFranco is saying is misinformation, right? Even when I pulled up his video of him saying that Russia destroyed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and then showing the Seymour Hersh article and all the other evidence that it was the U.S. who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, that video is still up, right? Another of the video that we covered last week of him lying about Africa, still up, right? So as long as you side with NATO, as long as you side with the Western imperialists who control the TikTok app now, your content will stay up. You're allowed to report misinformation. And of course, when the U.S. government forced ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, to hand over their Western servers, their American servers, to a company called Oracle with deep ties to the CIA, TikTok appointed a bunch of former NATO operatives and a bunch of former national security agents to be content managers at TikTok. This was reported in depth by Alan McLeod of Mint Press News. We've covered it about 1,000,000 times, but that was when our accounts started getting banned in mass and all our videos started getting taken down for misinformation. In total, as soon as Oracle took over, they erased 320,000 accounts that were supposedly tied to Russia. So anything, going against the NATO narrative was just wiped off the app completely. Truly disgusting. And these opportunists like Philip DeFranco have jumped at the chance to simp for NATO and make a lot of money doing it. So nothing but the utmost contempt for this guy, an absolute spineless coward, someone who's been on doing YouTube videos since 2006 and who completely sold out to the most evil people in the world so that he can continue to make money. So here's his video.
Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Benin say they'll participate in ECOWAS's military coalition to restore democracy in Niger. China has told its citizens in the country to prepare for an emergency. America has put Niger on its do-not-travel list and has ordered all non-essential government employees and their families to leave, with the U.S. also telling the ousted president of Niger.
Let me know if you can hear it, because we're using a different computer setup today while I'm at my cousin's house.
That it remains committed to restoring democracy. New reports say the junta was in contact with Mali and Burkina Faso before they even took power, suggesting that at some level, Russia and Wagner have been involved since the very start. With us now 3 days away from the war deadline and no sign of diplomatic solution on the horizon, follow to stay in the loop.
All right, so that's Phil's video. Now let's go to our buddy, the same guy that we listened to last time, who goes by the frustrated black leftist.
Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Benin say they'll participate in
destroy Philip DeFranco with facts and logic.
ECOWAS's military coalition to restore democracy.
So this is actually going to wind up being a complete and utter mess. What I think the West does not understand about Africa is that citizens of Africa, West Africa, members of South Africa in particular, feel as though the West and the rest of the world, in all honesty, has always come to Africa to exploit and extract. Most African citizens do not support their governmental leadership or their presidents. So this idea that ECOWAS can just start a military operation and invade When French West Africa in particular, I'm talking about the previous colonial territories of France, have extreme anti-French sentiment. I do not think that the United States, France, and the rest of like the NATO coalition and their African, governmental agents of democracy, because these motherfuckers are not democratic. They only have power because the West lets them have power, and they treat their citizens like shit. None of these citizens, not even the citizens of Nigeria, do not like the fucking government. Like, it's like...
We covered last week how the last elections in Nigeria were heavily influenced to the point of being rigged by the U.S. to put in power a puppet dictatorship. And it looked like the people were going to elect a more pro-African candidate, a candidate who had more intention of taking care of the citizens of Nigeria. So the U.S. came in, funneled a bunch of money into that election, helped rig the election, and put in a U.S. puppet dictatorship. So now you see why, right? Now that there's a coup in Niger, that's against the West and against French military occupation of Niger, Nigeria is like, yeah, we'll invade to restore order. We'll invade on behalf of the U.S. And it's not their people saying that. It's their U.S. puppet dictatorship of a government saying that. Their people don't even agree with their government. So,
not understanding, one, Black people at all, or having any connections to people who live in Africa. The only people who benefit from these governments are the bourgeois, like capitalists, people with wealth. Everybody else is suffering. If this military operation happens, and this is just a prediction, the West's goal is to stop Russia from building relations in Africa. If this happens, they finna learn. Listen, African people on the continent are tired of the West shit. And now you trying to make them fight wars against fellow Africans? You trying to have Black people kill fellow Black people on the fucking motherland? When I tell you the West is about to shoot themselves in the foot, I mean like they are going to take a shit. When I tell you they are about to shoot themselves in the foot, I do not think they understand what is coming. And this will be a catastrophe. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news.
So it seems like he thinks this could trigger a chain of events, right? That the people of Nigeria aren't about to go into Niger and start fighting a war on behalf of the West, because they know that the West installed a puppet dictatorship in their country. They know that their government doesn't represent them. So they're not about to sign up to go, take out another country who's trying to control their own destiny, who's trying to kick out Western influence. And this is a really cool little comment here from Astro Magic. Speaking as a Nigerian, I would love nothing more than for the citizenry of my own country to to have control over their own destinies. Right. I mean, that's really cool that we have a Nigerian in the chat. That's an awesome perspective to get on this issue, but it's exactly it. These people have no loyalty to the West. Their people, their actual soldiers, have no loyalty to the Western puppet dictatorship. They want to control their own destiny. They want to move away from that too. So if you try to send them into a war on behalf of NATO and Niger, who knows what's going to happen? Who's to say they don't turn their guns on their own government and say, you know what, you're a Western puppet dictatorship. We're not fighting a war for you. And in fact, we're going to overthrow you just the same way they did in Niger. Right? The coup, which is really like a revolution, was led by the military, very similar to what happened in Venezuela in 1992 when Hugo Chavez and a section of the military unsuccessfully tried to overthrow the government and then later came back and won an election. But you can have progressive revolutions that are led by the military, right? It's happened many times, which is kind of counterintuitive to think about because our military acts as an apparatus of imperialism in the U.S. They've done so many horrible things, but Hugo Chavez, Comandante Chavez, was the military leader, right? So you can have sections of the military that are backed by the people, backed by the working class, backed by the masses, who oust these governments and set up a more pro-working class, a more revolutionary government. Who's to say that doesn't happen in Nigeria when the U.S. and NATO try and sick them on their neighbors, try and sick them on other African countries? It's highly likely. Those in power have also contributed to many of our tribes beefing with each other for decades, right? And this, having a common enemy in the U.S. and NATO and France and all these Western countries occupying Africa might lead to more African unity, not just in Nigeria itself, but more Pan-African unity, which is always what Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, and other African revolutionaries have advocated for. They've said our country's lines, our borders are drawn by the Western colonizers, and what we need going forward is for the continent to unite against the Western colonizers. So if all this U.S. meddling in Africa serves to unite the African continent, the African people against the West, that will spell disaster for the Western Empire, right? And that will be a great thing overall for the struggle for socialism and the move towards a more equitable, multipolar world, a world that isn't just completely dominated by Western powers. Thank you so much for sharing that, Astro Magic. Appreciate it. Really nice to have a Nigerian in the chat to give their perspective. Oops, I just knocked over my microphone. I have my old microphone today. If my voice doesn't sound that good, I tend to bring my backup mic when I'm traveling so I don't wreck my nice mic. Plus, I have like a big box that I have to attach it to because it's not a USB microphone. It's the other kind, whatever you call it. Even here in Brazil, Americans do that stuff. They took out Dilma Rousseff with an intern coup and illegitimate impeachment. Exactly, right. That's the kind of stuff they've been doing in Africa, Brazil. I mean, the story of Africa and the story of Latin America is quite similar, right? In the fact that they're exploited, and every time they try and move towards a revolutionary government that invests their own country's resources and labor in their own country, it's usually thwarted by a coup or something. Salvador Allende, the coup of Dilma Rousseff, they jailed Lula in order to help Jair Bolsonaro win. Coup Hugo Chavez in 2002, but he was brought back. Countless examples. For a more contemporary example, the 2019 CIA coup in Bolivia that put in power a fascist dictatorship. But in a lot of cases, the countries have combated these coups and become even more unified against the West because of this. Like Lula's now in power in Brazil, right? So ultimately, it didn't work. In Bolivia, the MAS, the Movement for Socialism Party, still in power. Luis Arce, Evo Morales' economic advisor, was able to win the next election in the country amid mass suppression from the U.S.-backed fascist forces in Bolivia. And Evo was returned to the country. So the socialists are still in power. Now Evo will run for president in the next election. He'll be one of the favorites to win. So, it's like the U.S. meddling and the U.S. coups isn't working like it used to. Either is the U.S. propaganda and the anti-communist Red Scare propaganda, right? These people are weary of it. They're sick of it. And, the recent developments in Africa may just serve to unify the Pan-African movement against the U.S. Maybe that's me being too optimistic, right? Maybe that's wishful thinking. But I really see it as a step in that direction, like our comrade here is saying. Hi, I'm Philly DeFaco, and this is what the State Department wants you to be scared of right now, especially as Ukraine is getting wrecked. Oh, yes, Kyle. Kyle, we got to have you on the stream soon. I know I invited you on the other day. I can't do it today because I got practice coming up here. But at some point, and we have our Discord server set up so that we can invite people on the show so that we can take calls. Definitely want to start doing that sooner rather than later. So look forward to that in the next week when I'm back in my normal streaming situation in my studio. But yeah, it's hilarious. And thank you so much, Kyle. Kyle making it rain again. Goodness gracious. I almost feel bad with all the super chats we're getting. Sent in the Discord stream suggestions, Nigerians supporting Russia in the coup and talking about why Western media source with scary music and all. Well, thank you very much. We'll definitely react to that at some point, if not today. Nigerians supporting Russia in the coup, talking about why. Actually, we might listen to that today. I'm going to check that out. As soon as we got to finish this TikTok, and then I'll jump into that. Thank you so much, Kyle. You're the man.
nor do I want to jinx us or make a false prediction, but this very well may be the precursor to an actual next World War conflict. And it will cause immediate decay, an ethnic decay, I predict. And I think Black people and people who are descendants of the global South everywhere will learn and revolt against their Western overlords. This will be a critical mistake. It will be a horrible mistake.
Yeah, so he basically said the same thing I did. He said, I don't want to jinx it. You know, I said I don't want to be overly optimistic, but there's definitely a chance of that happening. You know, or at least it'll be a step in that direction towards unifying African countries against the U.S. Yeah, can't seem to find your that video you sent me, Kyle. I'm gonna react to that next. Oops. But if I can't find it, we'll just move on, and then I'll react to it next time. Oh, found it. All right, let's watch this next. And then I'll answer the next two super chats we got. Thank you to everyone sending super chats. I cannot, with words, express my appreciation for you. All I can say is that PragerU and the Daily Wire and all these bourgeois propaganda outlets are being funded by gazillionaires. They're being funded by the Wilkes brothers, the Ferris brothers, the Koch brothers. Right? But we're being funded by you. That's why we represent you, the working class. And that's why we'll never argue for making your lives worse. We'll always, 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 always fight in your interests and stave off the corporate donors and the corruptors who might seek to change us and put us on another path. Our funding comes from you. So our interests are in protecting you and spreading information, spreading education that will help the working class in the class struggle. Yeah, so Western media was freaking out because like Russian flags are being waved at these events, or at when the people in Niger are hitting the streets, right, and demanding that the Western powers leave and that they not intervene in the country and that they support the new government. And the West is like, look, they're waving Russian flags. Surely, you know, Russia was behind this. And how evil is it that they're moving towards allying with Russia? They're evil, just like Russia. They're comic book villains like Russia. But really what it is these people know that Russia and China are going to offer them an alternative to the U.S., right? They now can trade and be financial partners with these countries in the East rather than the United States. So them waving these Russian flags is them saying, we need to move away from the West. We need to move away from the U.S. We need to move away from the capitalist Western imperialists and move towards the East. And obviously Russia right now is having this direct confrontation with NATO, a direct confrontation with the West. So it's less, you know, that's what they're saying, is we no longer support Western global domination. And we do support and want to get closer with these powers who are fighting against Western global domination, like Russia. Right? They're burning the French flag and waving the Russian flag. The symbolism could not be more clear. Right? They're saying we want to trade with Russia because Russia doesn't have troops here. Russia doesn't have military bases here. Russia isn't exploiting us. They just want to trade with us. Obviously, that doesn't mean Russia's perfect, but it's them saying we want to move away from Western dominance and towards forging closer ties with the East. I had something else I wanted to say about that, but it slipped my mind. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. And for someone who has MSNBC brain, who has CNN brain, who's bought into the Russia boogeyman and just thinks Russia is evil and, you know, the US is fighting for democracy and freedom, whereas Russia is an evil dictator, imperialist dictatorship, right? They play this scary music and try to make something like this seem terrifying, right? Like, look, Russia is taking over this country, or this country's run by evil dictators just like Russia who hate our American freedom and democracy. When really it's America and France and the Western powers who are autocratically in an authoritarian fashion occupying these countries and making sure that their resources and labor are free for Western exploitation. Whereas Russia doesn't, you know, have military bases and military presence in the country. They just want to do normal trade deals, right? So it's the U.S. that's acting dictatorial, but they invert reality. And yeah, I just wonder how different this video would look for someone who watches MSNBC all day compared to how we look at it. The West called for the restoration of order, the restoration of neoliberal order, the return of French troops who run this country's government like a puppet. That's what they mean by order. So very interesting video. Thank you so much, Kyle, for sharing that. You see how massive the protests are right now. People are in the streets. You know, people are getting serious. And that's happening in places in Latin America too, like Peru. You know, all these massive uprisings against U.S. involvement and U.S. meddling. Unfortunately, in Peru, Pedro Castillo was just ousted in a Western-backed coup, and a coup backed by Peruvian oligarchs. But the people are not happy about it, and they're not taking it lying down. So solidarity with all these people for sure. Here, let's continue watching this for a bit. I think I ended this video a little bit prematurely. Thank you so much, Sebastian. Appreciate you always, brother. Let's listen to some of these Nigerians.
C'est la jeunesse, il n'y a aucune coloration politique. C'est la jeunesse nigérienne qui s'est retrouvée ici pour apporter son soutien à notre force de défense et de sécurité. S'il y a des jeunes qui font sortir le drapeau de la Russie.
So this is what I mean by there can be a progressive military coup. Right, it's not like the military violently seized power of the government for themselves, or it's not like a bunch of mercenaries backed and trained by the U.S. or trained by AFRICOM seized power of the government on behalf of the West. Right, the military has the backing of the people. They have the backing of the youth of the country. There are people in the streets supporting the security forces and supporting kicking out France. Right, so just because it's a military coup doesn't mean it's not progressive or it's not revolutionary. Did you get the iPad, Eddie? I did. Yes. Thank you so much, Fine Art Revolution. The people's iPad. And my TikToks have been fire ever since I got this thing. They've been well edited. They've been high definition. I'm able to do memes. Our TikTok account is blowing up again now. So thank you to every single person who helped donate for the people's iPad, including the Fine Art Revolution. Thank you.
Si nous ne sommes pas contre, c'est parce qu'ils ont vu un peu dans la sous-région le rapport de coopération de certains pays avec la Russie. On sent qu'il y a un traitement d'égalité et c'est pourquoi ils ont fait sortir ces drapeaux.
So you hear him saying exactly what I've been saying. You know, Russia and China have been cooperating with countries in the region, whereas the West, France and the US have been colonizing countries in the region. So of course they're waving Russian flags. Why wouldn't they? Of course they're supporting Russia in their conflict against NATO and, you know, the US puppet state in Ukraine. Why wouldn't they? Why would they want countries that are going to occupy them, exploit them, and steal their resources when they could support a country that wants to cooperate with them and protect their sovereignty?
diamants, nous avons l'or, nous avons le pétrole, et on vit comme des esclaves. Pourquoi? Jusqu'à quand? On ne pourra pas l'accepter. La base française du Niger doit quitter. On n'a pas besoin de Français pour nous sécuriser. La démocratie ne fonctionne pas parce qu'on n'a pas impliqué le peuple. Voilà. C'est le pouvoir du peuple pour le peuple. Le peuple n'est pas impliqué, c'est une question d'argent. On a peuporisé le peuple nigérien pour le faire dépendre de petites sommes. Et comme on a appauvri les gens, on leur donne 500 pour voter. Donc il n'y a pas de démocratie.
Of time.
Fascinating stuff. Great video, Kyle, as usual. Thank you so much for sending that. I did not have that planned today to react to, but that was perfect for what we were talking about. Got to hear directly from the Nigerian people what they think of this coup, what they think of the French occupation forces in their country, what they think of Russia. Right? And it's not them being backed by Russia. It's not Russia doing what the U.S. does and training up a bunch of mercenaries and, sections of the armed forces to overthrow a leader that they don't like. Right? Russia wants cooperation, and this coup came from the bottom up. Right? It could almost be described as a revolution enacted by the country's security forces, but with the backing of the masses. So fantastic. Solidarity with them.